All right, thank you so much for joining us at today's October Town Hall. We're going to give everyone just a few minutes. We do see here there are different people logging in, or not a few minutes, excuse me, a few seconds to get logged in here with us. But I'd definitely like to welcome you here today, and we'll be starting here shortly. All right. Again, welcome in to today's Town Hall webinar. My name's Adam Starnes, account manager here at MAD Security. The attendees are starting to tabletop off. I think we've got just about everybody joining here who registered. So just wanted to, again, thank you so much for coming and joining us, taking the time out of your Thursday to be here with us. Joining me today, not only for the Q&A session like you've seen in the last couple, but also for part of the presentation as well as our CMMC compliance lead, Jaclyn Jones. If you've attended our previous town halls, you know these sessions are designed to help you stay up to date, to better understand CMMC readiness, and to feel confident about your CMMC compliance journey. So today's topic is an important one, which is how MAD security services align with CMMC and why it matters. Because CMMC isn't just a project, but it's a lifestyle. Now, I will warn you, today's will seem a little more salesy than most of them as usual. And the reason being is just because we are telling you about services that MAD security can provide. But just know that if MAD security is not the right fit for you for whatever reason, that you could do these exact services with different providers. Just do your research on who's the best fit. And we'll kind of go over why MAD security may be the best fit for your company. But of course, in the end, you're going to decide for yourself. So we're going to go ahead and move on with the presentation today. Just in case you don't know, if this is your first time joining, you're not a current client, if this is maybe the first town hall that you've attended, but you've read a little bit about MAD Security, I just wanted to sort of set the stage and give you a little bit of an idea of who MAD Security really is. So, MAD Security is not a C3PAO. What does that mean? We do not perform the final assessment. But what is MAD Security? MAD Security is a managed security service provider, or MSSP, and a registered provider organization, or RPO. Our role is to help companies prepare for the CMMC audit by simply, by simplifying your cybersecurity challenges, by strengthening your environment through managed services like SOC, endpoint detection and response, vulnerability management, user awareness training, penetration testing, PreVeil, and so much more. We also provide expert guidance and consulting for CMMC compliance readiness through our GAP policy package and virtual compliance manager, also known as VCM services. We know our process works because MAD Security is CMMC Level 2 certified ourselves. We did pass the audit back in March of this year, and we were formally assessed by C3PAO in both the PreVeil and GCC High environments. That means we know how to assist with both. We've also taken multiple clients through successful C3PAO audits that now hold their very own CMMC Level 2 certificates. So every organization's journey looks a little different. Some of our clients use MAD Security for only managed cybersecurity services and handle their own compliance internally. Others rely on us solely for compliance consulting, audit readiness guidance, and assistance through the audit, while they may manage their own SOC or may have their own vulnerability management tools. But the best part is you have the option for both with MAD Security. With MAD Security, you can choose the level of support that fits your needs, whether if that's technical protection, compliance guidance, or a combination of both. So how do we determine exactly what you need or what you're going to be prescribed or what we should talk about? Well, when you first engage with MAD Security, we're going to take you through a 4-step MAD security process. Now, it's a little more in depth than what I'm going to go over here, but I'm just going to cover the basics. Our 4-step MAD security process, we refer to as the MAD process, is a proven method to ensure that we truly understand your situation before recommending solutions. Again, I will not walk you through the whole process now for the sake of time, and I'm not here to try to sell you anything, just really trying to walk you through why we do the things that we do. We start out that process by assessing your needs. We identify your goals. We ask you questions to figure out what you've tried before, what didn't work, why, what's not worked out for you in the past, and just to see what it is that you're really lacking. We identify the gaps, your challenges, whether if that be people, processes, technology. We determine your current position. We ask you things like, do you know your current SPRS score? Was that done by a third party, or was that an internal score? Did you self-assess? Where are you right now in your compliance journey? Then we're going to customize the right plan for you. We never offer the one-size-fits-all package. We propose only what you truly need to get you compliant, ready, and efficiently and effectively. You're going to talk to some people and they're going to say, hey, buy this package. What it's going to do is it's going to cover this, 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 and this, and you have to go GCC High or you have to go PreVeil, and this is what you're going to have to do. And you're going to have to buy all these services because that's your only choice. We don't want to do that to you. That's why we go through the time of going through these steps to determine what it is exactly that MAD Security could help you with, so that we're not proposing you something and you say, whoa, price is too high there. That's not a fit for us. And it's just because we might have overprescribed. Or us saying, hey, you need this. And you're like, oh, wow, we're not going with MAD Security because they're missing something that somebody else covered. So that's kind of the methodology behind having the conversations with you first, so that we can determine exactly what it is that's going to meet your needs fully and not give you too much so that it's the perfect fit. So if I had to say, in general, where is one of the best places to start, or where do we see companies start with MAD security most often when it comes to CMMC? The best place that I usually recommend to start is a CMMC level 2 gap assessment, even if you've done your own internal or self-assessment. This is going to measure your current environment against all 110 NIST 800-171 controls and those 320 objectives. And it's essential that we properly scope your CUI and understand exactly where your CUI, or controlled unclassified information, enters, stays, and exits your systems. For this assessment, you're going to get 7 key deliverables from MAD Security. Before I go down what these deliverables are, let me go ahead and lay something out to why this is important. Whenever you're comparing CMMC gap assessments, you're going around, you're getting your prices, you're going to see who's going to do that for you. You're going to see everything from what I'm about to tell you with 7 deliverables, all the way down to a spreadsheet that has each control listed, and it just says met, not met. Now, of course, there's a difference. I've had people before, they've come to me and they said, I got a quote for a gap assessment and it was half of what you quoted me. But whenever they got the results, it was the spreadsheet that says met, not met, and they gave it to them and said, here you go. With MAD Security, you're going to get more than that. And what are those things? Well, the first deliverable of the CMMC Level 2 gap assessment is going to be your CUI data mapping. And this is one of the most critical pieces of CMMC, helping you visualize where your CUI flows. Why is this important? Well, you're only going to have to keep the parts of your system that set CUI in compliance. Sometimes we did a town hall a few months back that was on building enclaves, saying that if CUI is not going to touch everyone, then you can build this enclave to keep all the CUI contained. You're going to build this fence, basically keep it all in there, and then that's all you're going to be responsible for holding up to the CMMC standards. So you can't do that unless you fully understand where your CUI enters, stays, and exits. So the CUI data mapping is the first deliverable. Second deliverables, the technical report, detailed findings of controls that are met, partially met, or not met. And then it's also going to have remediation recommendations. Then you're going to have the executive summary, a high level, easy to read overview for leadership. So it takes that technical report, goes ahead and turns it into a high level so that you can give it to people that are not very technical, like myself. I'm more of a relationships, I'm more of the business side of things. Whenever you got into the specific controls, I can understand it at a high level, and that's what this executive summary is for. And then you have the POAM, Plan of Action and Milestones. That's required under CMMC. It's going to show your plan of how you're going to approach these open controls or only partially met controls. Your fifth deliverable with MAD Security, project plan. So it's actually taking that POAM, is putting it into a document that's going to be broken up into 14 phases with an execution guide to remediate the remaining controls. And that can be customized based on your needs and based on the way that you want to approach it. You can work with your VCM if you go ahead and get that virtual compliance manager service to determine the way you'd like to do that. If you don't get VCM, you could let the individual that is leading the gap assessment and let them know that that's how you want it broken out. Then you have your SSP, your system security plan. This is another required CMMC document. This is going to be custom tailored to your environment. And then the seventh is your all seven of these things are going to be deliverables just from the gap assessment. And you do have to have an SPRS score. You do have to have the SSP. You do have to have a POAM. And it's extremely important that you've got CUI data mapping. So all of these things are included in that. So this is one way that the MAD security service, we build this to align with CMMC because that's what we focus on, is protecting companies within the DIB. All right, then you heard me mention things most often. It starts with the gap. You also have the VCM compliance manager service, virtual compliance manager service that actually is going to start in parallel with gap assessment. And many clients choose to do this. This is where expert guidance meets accountability. You're going to be assigned a dedicated VCM point of contact. You're going to be backed the entire time by a team of CMMC compliance experts, not limited just to that one person. They're actually meeting in meetings about what's going on with different people, different scenarios. You've got a whole team behind your main point of contact. They're going to review your gap results in your environment, strategize ways to meet each control and objective in a secure and cost-effective way, and ensure that your business remains both compliant and functional. CMMC actually includes a control requiring an individual to oversee your compliance management efforts. And this service helps you meet that requirement. So let's kind of also jump in a little deeper onto what this VCM service does provide. You are going to get regular meetings to review progress and next steps, remediation tips, suggestions. You're going to get strategic recommendations for each control and objective. You're going to get shared task management between your team and the MAD experts. You're going to get assistance with questionnaires from your supply chain, primes, or government. If you didn't know what that was before, I am sure now that the 48 is about to roll out and be in contracts here next month that you're starting to see these questionnaires now. We're hearing it from all over the place. Subcontractors are calling us every week saying, we have now received these questionnaires, want to know where we are in the CMMC process, and want to know where we've scored at. So can you help us with that? We're getting a lot of those questionnaires there. So VCM is going to help you with those questionnaires, helping you fill those out, help maybe even write you a letter of attestation saying that we are currently working with you on becoming CMMC compliant ready, just to buy some more time because we're running out of it. And then virtual support during your official C3PAO audit. And this is where your main point of contact actually remotely joins the audit so that they can explain to the auditor how and why each control is met. basically there to vouch for you if there's any discrepancies, saying we met this control by doing XYZ. So in short, VCM is the steady hand that guides you through the entire compliance process and stands beside you when it counts. So we will talk about your goals. We'll set expectations both ways, what you expect, what we expect. And then if we agree on meeting the level of effort and the time frame requirements, we will get you compliant ready within your goal time frame. So that's what we'll basically do, is collaborate to figure out what that is, make sure that we're all on the same page of what kind of work that's going to take, and then get started. All right, so thank you so much for hanging in with us so far. Now we're actually going to be able to hear from our compliance lead herself, Jaclyn Jones. And we're going to talk a little more about these services, everywhere from SOC and EDR to VCM. And we're going to talk about how these services that we offer align with CMMC controls and why that alignment matters for certification success.
Thanks, Adam. I do want to first, before we start with the discussing each service, want to address a question that was in the chat. When you mentioned the deliverables from a gap assessment, the 7 that were required that we deliver, one of the numbers cut out. So just to review, the number 1 deliverable is a CUI data mapping. Basically, that is the most important document, one of the most important things that we consider that in the SSP. But basically, it shows where CUI flows in your environment. The technical report was number 2. The number 3 is the executive summary. Number 4, which I think is one of the things that may have been missed, is the plan of action and milestones. And basically what that is the list of open controls that you have not met the full requirements of. Project plan was number 5. 6 was SSP, System Security Plan. And then number 7, the one that cut out, was the current SPRS score. And so we deliver that as part of one of your 7 deliverables from the gap assessment as well.
Excellent. Yeah, thank you so much, Jaclyn. Yeah, sorry if anything does cut out on my side, do like you did, put it in the comments and we will repeat that. Thank you so much, Jaclyn, for going and clarifying all of that.
Sure.
Okay. Yeah, so if it's good with you, Jaclyn, what we'll do is we'll move on to sort of the policy pack. If you could maybe go over some things about how our policy pack helps somebody save time, effort, how it aligns with CMMC, and let's just kind of go from there.
Sure. Okay, so our policy pack, essentially what it is we have created templates that are mapped to each of the CMC domains. So there's 15 total. We have 1 per each of the domains, so that's 14. And then the 15th one is an accessible use policy. So these are very important because what in your future certification assessment, what they're going to want to see is to have your information documented, and then you provide verification that this is essentially you're doing what you have documented you say you're going to do. A lot of people, when we first do gap assessments, they're missing the documentation part of it, just because there's so many things that need to be defined, specified, identified, things that need to actually be in written documentation. So our policy package helps with that. Basically, they're customizable to your environment. They do include a few best practices. And then anything that's like a written documentation required for CMC, we try to put those in there as well, to where it's not only is it for you guys understand what really kind of needs to be documented, but also kind of like simplify the process for you, to where it's some effort on your part, but it reduces your level of effort to get that documentation done. Documentation is crucial. Like I said, when you have your future certification assessment, one of the things they're going to see along with the SSP, the System Security Plan, is your list of policies. They want those to be given ahead of time to where they can read through those and understand exactly how you state you're meeting the requirements of control, what you have, what your intent are, what the responsibilities are within your team, and then also expectations of what you expect your employees to deliver to actually meet these compliance requirements. So that being said, the policy package is very beneficial. If you also add in the virtual compliance manager service that Adam has already talked about, part of our process in that service is actually helping you guys fill out those documentation and get those policies ready to go for the assessor.
Excellent. That's actually a good segue because we go into VCM. I know I already touched on VCM some, but what else could you share about VCM that to where it's really beneficial, how it really is going to help throughout the process?
Sure. So essentially, you are assigned a VCM consultant, a dedicated consultant. We have multiple consultants here at Mad Security on our team. And what we do is we kind of act as an extension of your team. So a lot of companies uh, are in our targeted market do not have the capability of having like a dedicated compliance person on their team. So we act in that role. We help with CMC remediation. We provide expert guidance of what the interpretation of the controls truly mean, because some of the requirements are vague, and it's really up to the organization to define certain things. So we use our expertise, our knowledge we gained while helping other clients through their certification assessments, listening to what the assessors are asking for, and so we share that knowledge on with other clients of this is what the requirements are, this is our interpretation of those. We do offer assistance or remediation assistance, as in we can again, if you have an open gap, like a control that you've not met the full requirements of, we'll identify what it is that you need to do and provide or supply potential suggestions of what you can do to close that gap and actually close that control out. We do have regular meetings. And it's on a scheduled basis, so you know ahead of time exactly when we're going to meet. We have touch points in between. Some of the things we do is essentially manage kind of like your remediation. We'll assign action items for both the client and the consultant as well. Manage the task. We will review the evidence. So when we close out a control, we do ask that you provide some kind of evidence for validation, so that there's actually not just making the assumption that the control is truly closed. We actually do want proof of that. So once we see that, we help you update your documentation so that all of that remains assessor ready, so that the closer you get to your future certification assessment, you don't have to scramble at the last minute and update all your documentation. We try to keep that updated for you guys. And final thing, and one big benefit to this service that a lot of our clients truly enjoy is the fact that during your C3PO certification assessment, we will provide virtual support for you. And what that means is your compliance consultant will set in on the certification assessment interviews themselves, and we will support you during that process as well.
Excellent. Yeah, VCM it's a game changer. We've had some feedback on some clients that have been through the process. Again, I'm account manager. I work with our current clients, and I get a lot of the feedback. And basically, they're like, "Man, for the money of it and the expertise that you're getting, it's a big help." Because sometimes somebody hires on just one person to be able to come on and do this for their company. And what they find out is that one person, unless they had just extensive CMMC things, may not have had a CMMC background. And then that is something that's a little more difficult for them to get a grasp around. But not only are you getting that one person with our team, but as Jaclyn mentioned, and I mentioned a couple slides ago, you do have that full team back with the support as well. So yeah, no, it's definitely a great service. And you do have Jaclyn herself leading that team.
So
All
it's a
right,
great
well,
team.
yeah, absolutely. A wonderful team. Yeah, so what we'll do here, we'll move on into SOC to kind of keep things rolling for time's sake. We have a lot of clients that have come to us and they're like, why do we need SOC SIM for CMMC? Could you kind of elaborate on that and why the Mad Security SOC works for CMMC?
Sure. So first, in case no one understands, SOC is Security Operations Center. So we have analysts in our SOC 24/7 and 365 days a year. That includes holidays. So essentially, we are monitoring your environment. So any CMC data source, the logs from that, the audit logging, some other domains that's covered in CMC for that are incident response, system communication protection, as in monitoring the inbound and outbound communications on the firewall. So all of these logs need to be correlated together. So, and then also analyze for suspicious activity or potentially malicious activity. What our SOC does is basically that's what we do. Our analysts, we have dashboards. They analyze alerts that come in, determine if it's a false positive or if it's a potentially true incident, and then therefore we notify you. The advantage of using our SOC versus trying to do that internally is, again, we're 24/7, 365 days a year. We have the expertise to actually understand what is potentially a false positive because a lot of alerts generally are. We have to identify if it's actually truly an incident and then let you know. Um, the thing about a SIM in CMC, a lot of people ask if a SIM is required. Technically, no, there's nothing that says you have to have it. However, there are several controls around audit and accountability. And there is actually a specific control just around the correlation of those logs. And it's very difficult to prove that you're doing correlation properly without actually having a SIM solution in place because you essentially have to take the logs, like I said, from separate data sources, correlate those together because an event on a one data source may seem benign, may seem it's not anything malicious at all. But when you combine that event with something from a different data source, suddenly you see that it is actually malicious activity. So that is why correlation is actually a separate control in CMC because it's very important to correlate those logs. Think I covered everything?
Yeah, no, that's great. And that's definitely great. And that kind of goes into EDR. I know EDR really is an enhancement of the SOC itself so that we can have visibility on those endpoints for investigations. Is there anything around CMMC in particular that is easier or controls met because of having a service like EDR?
Yeah, so essentially it's logging on the endpoint themselves, and then the logging, those logs are sent to the SIM solution. So it does help to pull the logs from the endpoint. Other things it can do is EDR will provide protection from malicious code directly there, because there are some things that aren't detected by just a normal antivirus solution. And it can also do periodic scans of those endpoints, real-time file scanning. So where if something, as a file is opened down from the internet, executed, things like that, the EDR solution will also take care of those things as well. But like you already mentioned, it's basically detect malicious file changes, possibly suspicious network connections, user behavior that is not normal. That's a big way that we determine if something is like actually potentially malicious activity is if it's normal user behavior or if there's something abnormal for that. But again, those EDR logs are sent to our SOC for correlation, and it just supports all the audit and accountability, and it also supports incident response and then also system information integrity as well.
Excellent. All right, so most people have heard, out of conversations I've had anyway, about vulnerability scanning. So what does vulnerability management do as far as covering controls for CMMC? Like, what's the requirement there, and how does this cover it?
Sure. So there's two domains essentially for CMC that helps cover. It's the risk assessment domain and the system information integrity. And that's about finding your vulnerabilities and not actually remediating your flaws, which vulnerabilities are included in that. So our vulnerability management service is scanning your system and subsystems for vulnerabilities. And then also it will prioritize those. And vulnerability language is the CVSS score, is basically the determination of how severe that score is. And that's important because you want to prioritize your remediation based on the severity of those vulnerabilities. So your critical vulnerabilities, of course, should be your highest priority thing that you remediate, followed by your high, medium, and low. And then also what vulnerability management service covers is we identify the vulnerability, report it, and then once it's fixed, the scans that occur after that should no longer show that vulnerability. So if it was remediated correctly and addressed correctly, then it should not be flagged on the subsequent scan. So that's essentially how the vulnerability management.
Excellent. All right, and then user awareness training. I know there's some controls around this. We use a user awareness training called Know Before, which is very widely known. The more people I talk to, a lot of people have heard about it. So what is that control or controls specifically that this UAT covers, and maybe just a little bit about, what's so good about Know Before?
Sure. So the main domain, of course, is the awareness and training domain. There's core security awareness courses that employees can do. There's basic, you can pick whichever courses. There's 30-minute courses, 45-minute courses, whatever. But basically, they cover the general security awareness training, right? Phishing, ransomware, social engineering. But then to go above and beyond that, there's other controls like role-based training. It will help you with that as well. So someone who has an elevated level of risk within your company needs to do additional role-based training. So privileged users can do additional training. Finance, they're typically targeted because they have access to invoices. So they may have additional training regarding how to properly protect, invoice information. Don't fall for these specific emails. Human resources, C-level, executives. Another biggie is 3.2.3, which is insider threat training. And that's actually called out as a separate control. And that's another thing that the Know Before does have great courses on insider threat training as well. And in addition to just the awareness and training domain, this also helps cover like access control. It teaches you how to protect your credentials, protect your device, how to recognize unauthorized activity, how to spot indicators of insider threat, unusual system behavior. And also incident response is it actually teaches you how to recognize potential incidents, which is key because as you want to stop those incidents as soon as possible after they occur. So awareness and training is very important.
Absolutely. And Know Before is very entertaining as well. So
Yes.
if I had to throw you something a little salesy in there, that would be it. But it's true. It's actually very entertaining. Everybody's always asking for the new episodes for the next season to come out.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're definitely going to enjoy it if you decide to go with Know Before. All right, technical testing. A lot of people get confused that I talk to around vulnerability scanning and vulnerability management, which we already spoke of, and technical testing like penetration tests. Are there any requirements outside of the vulnerability management portion that calls for any sort of technical testing?
Yeah, so CMC level 2, revision 2, or the revision 2 essentially, not necessarily, but what tech testing will help you do is it does help with the risk assessment domain and it helps with the security and communications protection domain. So it basically goes beyond doing a scan of your system and finding these vulnerabilities, and it would actually attempts to exploit those vulnerabilities themselves. And how successful the penetration test is how you know if you are actually properly safeguarded against these vulnerabilities and exploits. Another thing is the system communication protection, like I already mentioned. It tests your boundary defenses, your firewall, VPN, and your access points. And so the more of this information you have ahead of time, basically, if you don't know that there's a flaw in your system, you don't know how to fix, you don't know you have to fix it. So it just helps harden and safeguard your system.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I would actually go to say again, just as a quick reminder, it's easy to forget whenever we're trying to do something like meet CMMC compliance controls, because that's all that's kind of on the mind. But really what the whole idea of CMMC is to build the security posture so that everything is safer, it's more protected. And anytime that you can do any sort of technical testing to test just how well you have everything actually locked down, it's a good idea, whether if it be necessarily a requirement or not. So if that's
Yes.
something you're interested in doing, that's a service that Mad Security can assist with, even though it's not necessarily CMMC required. Now we're going to move on to PreVeil. If listeners, if you've ever watched any of our enclave town halls or maybe GCC High or PreVeil, again, I will say that no matter which environment that you're going with, I do want to say that we can assist you. Whether if you got a GCC High environment, we're going to be able to assist you. If you want to go PreVeil or if you already have PreVeil, we can assist you there as well. But we are a PreVeil partner, so we can actually assist you with getting this particular service if it's something you're needing or wanting to want to go that route, which is basically going to be storing CUI and end-to-end encryption email gateway. Jaclyn, could you explain a little more, maybe in detail from what I covered, what PreVeil really is and what it's doing for you for CMMC?
Sure. So basically, like you mentioned, it's a cost-effective option for storing and sharing CUI. There do have an email gateway option to where you can receive email that contains CUI directly within the platform, so that it doesn't instead of using your 365 email. Um, Another thing, you can use it as a collaboration tool, so the files stay in PreVeil, and you do have options in PreVeil to configure it to where you don't allow downloads to the endpoint. And you can securely figure out the ways. There's role-based access control. You can limit who has access to specific files, specific folders, and it's just a really cost-effective way. A lot of people they think they have to use GCC high, but their environment is just not cost-effective for them to either put everybody in GCC or operate two separate tenants. So PreVeil is definitely a worth looking into option, I would believe. We've had several clients pass their CMC certification assessments by using PreVeil as an option. So it's definitely worth considering. And it does offer end-to-end encryption and it has security built in. Another thing is they do have a comprehensive customer responsibility matrix, a CRM, and they very plainly label which of the CMC objectives are PreVeil inherited, shared responsibility, and customer responsibility. So they do take CMC requirements and meeting those requirements very seriously.
Excellent. Yeah, so PreVeil, again, great option. We are partners with PreVeil, so we can actually have that conversation fully if you're interested in getting more information on that, as well as any of these services. We only had 45 minutes here today, so we weren't able to dive into some of the details about these things. I'm sure there's going to be lots of questions, which we're going to try to get as many Q&A questions done today as we can. If we cannot get to you, of course, we'll get back to you on that. But please continue to ask us the questions that you may have. And again, for the sake of time, because we do want to be able to give you time for a few Q&A questions here, I do want to move through this rather quickly. But again, there are several things that we can do for you, like risk assessments, tabletop exercises, mock assessments, dry runs. But again, we get to know you and only prescribe what's needed to keep you safe, secure, and compliant. We specialize in helping primes and subcontractors within the DIB become and remain CMMC compliant because it is what we do. All of our services revolve around that, and that is why we chose to become CMMC Level 2 compliant ourselves, so that we could prove to you and to prospects our dedication and our understanding of CMMC. One more quick thing I want to touch on here before I move on to the next slide is you got to remember, whenever you're trying to get to a SPRS score of 110, the scale starts at negative 203 and goes to 110. These services that we went over today are going to cover a large portion of that, but not all of it, which is why you need things like the VCM service to help understand the rest of the controls. For example, with physical controls that you may have there as far as logging who's entering and exiting the building. That's not a service that Mad Security provides for you. So that's just an example of something to our VCM service could actually provide recommendations on how to actually meet those controls. So all around it's built in a sense to where we can, if you need it, provide lots of services that are going to cover those controls for you. And the ones we can't, we're going to provide the expert guidance for how to meet it. So we'll kind of move on because I know that you're waiting for that Q&A session to get here. So I will quickly go over this page here. You're going to see the free pre-assessment. If you're interested in how you would score on a self-assessment, you can use this link. It'll be sent out afterwards to where you could actually take a pre-assessment. It's also on our website. Answer 31 questions. Yes, no, not sure. And it's actually going to judge where you are as far as CMMC compliant ready. You could also download the free master bundle as a thank you for joining us today, which is going to have things like understanding my CUI data flow, enclaves. It's going to have a few other pieces of very valuable information in there as far as CMMC goes. The free CMMC assessment guide that's going to give you tips on actually going through the C3PAO audit. And then you could also, of course, use my booking link or email to either ask questions or book a time with me, and let's talk about what you're currently doing for CMMC compliance readiness and or cybersecurity services and see if and how Mad Security might be able to assist you. So again, I went through that rather quickly. You're going to be able to see that in the slides afterwards, but I did want to go ahead and move on to the live Q&A. We're going to be able to get 2 or 3 in here and follow up with the others after. So if you'll get those questions submitted, if you have not already, it would definitely be our pleasure to assist here. All right. So we're going to go ahead and move quick. We're just in order here. Jaclyn, I've got a question. What's the biggest mistake an organization makes when preparing for CMMC?
Good question. Treating as a one and done. So the idea that all you have to do is just meet the referral requirements, get to the 110 score, get your certification assessment done, and then you're finished is a big misconception. It needs to be an ongoing process, right? You need to build this security into your system, incorporate it into your operations, make it part of your daily work life, because it doesn't stop with just getting your certification assessment. There's ongoing continuous monitoring requirements. You have to do a self-assessment once a year. You have to get a C3PO certification assessment every 3 years. And also, I would also hesitate about people want to rush getting it done. They just want to just see the finish line. But you miss documentation, you rush remediation. Maybe you don't configure something correctly, or it doesn't. You configure it, but then you don't think about how it actually affects your daily operations because you do still, perform the work that you have to do, and then that also causes you unnecessary stress. So those are the big things. Just take your time, implement CMC the correct way, and in a way that you can continue to do these practices going forward in the future. And keep in mind that you do also have to keep the controls fully, requirements fully met, and not just only do it once a year, once every 3 years kind of thing.
Excellent. We're going to get one, maybe two more if it's a quick one. We'll see here before we move on. So we got a couple slides to share with you before we go. We do have a lot more questions than that here. So please continue to submit those because we are going to follow up with every question afterwards. So don't ever think that it's burdensome or won't get answered because we will definitely get it back to you. I will go to this one here. What is the best way to get started if a company is not sure where it stands with CMMC?
So essentially, I recommend this to anybody, even if you think you know where you stand with CMC, is to get a gap assessment done. That will be the official going through all the 110 controls, 300 objectives, get your documentation, any evidence to validate things. And then that actually gives you a true representation of where you stand and what you currently have fully implemented and what your requirements are lacking. So that's the biggest thing. And then that will also lead into how much remediation you have to do, what the time's going to be involved, the efforts is going to be involved. So highly recommend, even if, like Adam has mentioned, even if you don't engage MAD security for this, get in a gap assessment by someone who actually has CMC experience and can give you correct, accurate results for that.
Excellent. All right, guys. Well, we've got about 8 more questions here, but we have only got about 2.5 minutes left. So for respecting your time, we will follow up with you afterwards. Or again, you can email me. You can use the booking link to put time on my calendar if you want to have that conversation. If it's directly for Jaclyn, still go ahead and send it in. We'll make sure that we get that answered for you. I did want to touch on a couple of things here. We do every third Thursday have another town hall webinar. Got a big one coming up in November because on November 20th, we're going to talk about the 48 CFR update, what the final rule means for you and your contracts. And then we're going to have another town hall December 18th, and then going into the new year, third Thursdays as well as we go. So I would like to say thank you again so much for coming to join Jaclyn and I and MAD Security here at the MAD Security Town Hall webinar. Again, every third Thursday, please come back and join us. If you do have suggestions on topics that you would like covered, and when it's in relation to either these managed cybersecurity services or to CMMC compliance readiness, please submit all of those questions because we want to be able to answer and educate everything that is important to you, because you are what we're here for. So we thank you so much for joining us, making this a success along with MAD Security. Again, until next time, stay safe, stay compliant, and we'll talk to you soon. Have a great day.